The launch of digital financial services in Africa led to an increase in the number of people accessing mobile money solutions where banks never established branches before, like in rural villages. The access to mobile money services increased daily per capita consumption levels of households. Today, financial inclusion is a means to an end. Yolanda Cuba, Group Chief Digital and Fintech Officer at MTN, joins CNBC Africa to discuss how digital financial inclusion can be a catalyst for equitable development and economic growth. As the conversation around the world is about recovery from COVID-19, what role do you see digital financial inclusion playing in Africa's recovery and Africa's development?
Firstly, Fifi, let's actually congratulate you on your awesome achievement and the award that you got the other day. It really is testimony to the work you've done, and absolutely well done. When we go back to the question around digital inclusion and the acceleration of adoption, really, COVID will accelerate the adoption of new technologies, whether it be financial services or other technologies indeed. What we actually have seen as part of the COVID response from a lot of the MNOs, including MTN, of course, is that they actually zero-rated or gave for free services during the COVID pandemic. And that actually had the effect of actually accelerating the adoption of fintech. And as we accelerate the fintech adoption, obviously we're including more and more people in the ecosystem. And that will definitely lead to economic participation by many, because financial access necessarily then brings about economic prosperity for a lot of people.
MTN's broader financial services offering, can you just enlighten us on what you guys currently have in your stable right now and the areas that you are focusing on for growth in the future?
Today, as we sit here, we've got 42.9 million customers that are active on a 30-day basis, with more than 85 million wallets that are actually registered on our platform as we speak. This is in the context of about 260 million customers that MTN actually has on the GSM base. So you can see that there is a significant penetration of our base, but significant opportunity also to still go forward. When we look at revenue at our current run rate, you can see where we would end. We are over around 12 billion of revenue as we sit today. And that, if you ask me what is it going to be in the next few years, we'll most probably have doubled that in terms of number of agents. And those are the people that actually help with our ecosystem in terms of making sure that people are able to cash in and also cash out. In other words, we draw money from a physical person that is an agent. We've got more than 650,000 agents that are out there that are helping our customers to be financially included. And if I look at in terms of products like Momo Pay, which is what one would actually consider similar to a Visa or MasterCard kind of merchant, where you're able to go to a store and pay with your card. We pay with Momo, and there we have around 350,000 merchants that are already registered within our base. So, that just gives you the kind of scale. And in terms of our business, we have a number of verticals. We've got the payments verticals that everyone knows mobile money for. However, there is remittance as well, because in Africa, we still get a significant amount of inbound remittances that are supporting families from the diaspora into Africa. We've got loans. One of the things that people actually underestimate is the need for micro or nano loans. We do nano loans in our base, really small loans that allow people to be able to start businesses or actually be able to do the things that they need to do in order to further their lot in life. We do those. We do insurance products as well on our insurance. We've got more than 10 million customers actually registered as we speak today, with more than 5.4 million of them actually registered on that platform. So, it is a diversified kind of financial services play rather than just a narrow kind of effect where Momo actually originated from, which was peer-to-peer.
But I want to speak to you about your mobile money offering Momo and how it has been impacted by the lockdown, the kind of trends that you have seen subsequent to the COVID-19 lockdowns being put in place.
Yeah. So what we're seeing in terms of trends is actually quite positive. We're seeing an increased number of customers actually adopt Momo, and that is as a result of people not wanting to touch money. And obviously that actually works directly with to accelerate the adoption of Momo. What was a surprising trend for us is the growth that we saw in average amount of transfers between individuals. We actually saw that increase. And what we can't actually be clear on is whether that is attributable to the fact that we made services free, or it was a change in how people wanted to transfer value from one person to another. So that has been a positive kind of a surprise that we saw. However, there was some downside that we also saw, especially in the first 2 months of Momo. Of the COVID kind of lockdown. And that is, without the agents, a lot of people started transacting less, right? And what this means is that although we have a digital platform in which people can actually transact, a lot of people are still comfortable to go to an agent to actually help them with transfer. That's essentially what that means. And also, remember, in order to make the ecosystem work, you actually need the agents, or you need to actually take the money, draw it from a bank into a wallet that you can actually then transfer. And not all banks actually came to the party in terms of that. So, for example, in Rwanda, where we saw the regulators actually being super proactive around making sure that there is a free kind of ecosystem kind of thinking in order to respond to COVID, we saw a lot of people being able to move money from their bank accounts into their wallet, and then being able to actually transfer money right across the ecosystem. In other markets, we saw that actually a lot slower, because obviously there is still friction in the process of drawing money from a bank into your wallet. There's some charges and things like that.
Yolanda, and has that experience with Momo at the early stages of the lockdown, has that impacted how you're thinking about rolling out this product offering in future?
It has affected us in terms of learnings, not necessarily around how we roll out, but in terms of key learnings. So, we most probably were now a lot more kind of bullish in terms of where people were in terms of digital adoption, right? From what we were seeing. However, what we learned is that people are still physical even in this digital world. So there is a lot of behavioral kind of comfort that we need to give people in order to move forward with adoption of these new technologies, especially when it comes to money. Money, unlike other things, is very different to people. It actually has an emotive value to it. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing that actually we've learned is that when you give people services at a price that they can afford, they are likely to actually adopt it a lot more. And thirdly is that regulators and how they think about developing the ecosystem can either be enablers or can be a stumbling block in terms of digital adoption. So as I said, in Rwanda, for example, where we saw the red carpet being rolled out in terms of the entire ecosystem, we see significant growth in that market, right? And when we look at another market, I'm not gonna name another market, but where I always say, where there's more red tape, then obviously there was a lot less effective kind of effect in those markets. So those are the three things that I would say we've seen, and definitely will influence a lot around how we engage with our regulators, and also how we think about the customer value proposition that we're rolling out to our customers.
Just talk to me about those partnerships that you currently have, and again the way forward in the path to growth.
So if I look at just how MTN thinks of itself, we think about our ecosystem as an ecosystem. So ecosystem necessarily have to have partners in it. So we actually regard ourselves as people that don't have the exclusivity or the kind of proprietary information on all innovation. So there are two things that we actually do in this regard. The first one is that we choose partners within the parts where we want MTN to drive a particular service. So, for example, with nano loans, we tend to partner with banks in terms of that, and we facilitate the transfer of value between the customer and ourselves and the bank. So it actually ends up with being a tripartite kind of positioning. And then on insurance, I mean, we owned 50% of IO, which is in partnership with Momentum. However, right now we're in the process of finalizing an additional 25% acquisition. So as I sit here today, once all regulatory approval is done, we will own 75% of the insurance business, which we own together with Momentum. And in other places, it's commercial kind of agreements. In other places, it's structural or shareholding kind of relationships that we have. So that's the core kind of part where we are driving that key vertical. The second one is where we actually are enabling others to actually benefit from our technologies and what we've done as mobile money within our context. And there we use what we call Momo API. And on Momo API, APIs are just a language that computers actually use to talk to each other, to pull information or transfer information between two kind of applications. So basically, if someone sitting in Kampala today actually comes up with an innovative idea, they can actually come to us as Momo and connect through an API and be able to connect not with just one market, but multiple markets, for example, to actually be able to pay with our Momo wallet, or to actually be able to verify information that we may have, or things like that. And that is using APIs. So with the remittance companies, for example, we partner with them in order to be able to transfer money from one wallet to another wallet, so that people that the loved one have sent money to can actually receive the money locally. So we do a number of things in terms of that. And as of now, last month we had about 20 million calls on our APIs as Momo API. That is actually quite significant. But until we reach around 100 million per month, we actually haven't made a dent. So I'm really, really excited about that because it allows other innovators and other service providers to actually have access to our ecosystem.
And what are the targets for making a dent, for reaching the desired level that MTN seeks?
So, I mean, if I stand back a little bit, I mean, the banks are going to kill me when I say this, but they had 100 years to include everyone in terms of financial access. And basically, somehow we ended up in Africa with about 30% financial inclusion. But as we sit here from the numbers from the World Economic Forum and the World Bank, that looks more like 60%. So there has been a dent as a result of actually also including mobile financial inclusion as part of the equation. What we want to do, we want to invest the kind of number that we're talking about. We want 70 to 80% of people having financial access, and basically, if there's going to be a slither of people that are left, then that's the slither of people. But even then, we want them to have financial access, not just financial access, but financial inclusion. Financial inclusion is when you are able to do the kind of things that you and I can do, Fifi. And basically, that is being able to have a loan if you need a loan, being able to do payments without moving from your couch, being able to sell stuff online and offline, and being able to have them delivered, being able to have access to insurance products and the likes. And that's really what we're trying to do, is actually deliver not just financial access, but financial inclusion.
Over what time frame, Yolanda?
I mean, I have audacious kind of goals for ourselves as MTN. As I said, I mean, for me, if we doubled the number of users of mobile money services within the next few years, that means we would move from somewhere around 43, 44 million to about 85, 86 million. And then from there, we would move to about 100 million users within about 5 years. If we got to 100 million users within 5 years, I think we are starting to make a dent. Because remember, we are not the only one playing in this space. There is a lot of us actually within the telco space playing in this space. And for me, if we get that right, we would have done well.
Because of COVID-19, now we were told that no, we can't use cash because cash is a potential source of contracting the virus, and thus we saw the adoption of or the accelerated adoption of mobile technology, like the services that MTN provides, for instance. But my question then to you is, there's a lot of excitement right now about the possibility of a vaccine coming to market and us getting it possibly before Christmas. And so the trends that you have seen in the technology space, in the mobile payment space as a result of the lockdowns, how much of them do you see staying after, a vaccine does come and we subsequently go back or go forward into the new normal where cash still has a place?
Yeah, I think, if I pick on South Africa, I think there's about 135 billion of cash in circulation. So that is not going to disappear overnight, right? It is impossible for that to disappear overnight. So we hope that at least somewhere in the region of 30 to 40% of the behavior actually will stay intact. And the reason for that is that there is a convenience factor that actually has happened.
You did mention that quite a number of players are in the space. A lot of telecoms players also wanting to get a piece of this pie. So then the question does come, how does MTN plan to set itself apart to reach some of the targets that you envision for customer adoption?
Yeah. So basically what we've done is actually we've sat down and analyzed our base and using data to actually drive a lot of the decisions that we're actually making. So for example, today around advanced services, so basically outside of P2P and cash in, cash out that I mentioned, which was the mainstay of mobile money when it started, is really diversification into new verticals that I actually mentioned today. And when I talk about diversification, for example, today I've got a new team that has been set up. It started about a year ago, that actually does credit scoring, which is something that we never actually used to do, and using really advanced analytics and big data to actually do that. So basically now we're actually building new capabilities in order to actually go into new areas across the financial services kind of space. And as we drive these new verticals, actually new opportunities start actually opening up. And, once basically we started with the bank tech, we call it the bank tech model. A number of people have approached us for different use cases for the same data that we are actually using today. So that's what we're actually planning to do as MTN. And at the core of MTN is this fundamental belief that everyone deserves the benefits of a modern connected life. And in that, basically, that is what drives the kind of product design and product placements that we actually do out in the market. And any kind of product that advances that means it's solving a real need or a real problem for the African continent. And our focus is really to do that, to develop solutions at scale for the African continent, not just for South Africa, not just for Ghana, not just for Cote d'Ivoire, not just for Cameroon. It really is really for the African continent with minor customization in each country, but really building for the African continent. And what we found in actually doing that, it allows us to actually scale solutions, but also minimize the cost of deployment to the end customer, because we're actually using the same IP, the same systems in order to deliver that.
And as we stay on the subject of economic transformation and the potential of mobile money to play a helping hand here, you did at the top of the interview mention some challenges during the lockdown in certain jurisdictions that you didn't want to name. You'll keep us guessing there, it's fine. In order to achieve this, I imagine that it will need some form of a better enabling environment or some form of regulation coming to the party as well. So perhaps just speak to us about mobile money's ability to contribute to economic transformation, and also what are the factors that need to be put in place, maybe from a regulatory or a policy point of view, to achieve it holistically.
Yeah, I guess the first one is, and I'm going to pick on regulatory in particular, is that, mobile money companies are not trying to be banks. In the main, we're not trying to be banks. And, we never want to be governed by Basel 1, Basel 2, Basel 20, whenever it comes. We actually want to be facilitators of payments across the value chain. And in order to do that, we need regulation that is fit for purpose and that is timeless. And that's important, as that a lot of countries, we actually have regulation actually coming behind us in a lot of things, and then trying in some cases to actually stop us or actually treat us as if we are a bank. Mobile money traditionally in a lot of jurisdictions, because it's a bank-led model, you are balancing between a wallet, an electronic wallet that someone has, and what is in the bank. So there isn't a increased risk to the fiscus. And I think sometimes there is a notion that if something goes wrong within the mobile money space, then it will actually create new systemic risks within the fiscus. 9 out of 10, that is not the case, because a lot of times the regulation is actually is dependent on a bank being the one that actually helps the mobile money company to actually do what it does in terms of transactions. Mm-hmm. So that for me is the first one, is actually making sure that the regulation, timeless, and also is what I would call bank-light type of regulation. This is a new category, in fact, of services, and it should be regulated as if it's a new set of services, rather than taking a bank and saying this is what mobile money people or providers must actually be doing. Secondly, from a regulatory perspective, I think, we are moving so fast, right? And everything we do tends to actually require some form of regulatory approval, whether from central banks or from a telco perspective. And for us to be able to innovate at the rate of being able to solve problems for the African continent and also contribute to economic prosperity, we need regulation to actually be a lockstep with us. And that can only happen if we establish an absolute relation and way of working that is based on trust and transparency between regulators as well as the mobile money users as well.
All right. Yolanda, just a quick one. What does bank-light regulation mean for the safety of my money? Because I think a lot of people take comfort in the fact that our banks are heavily regulated, in the sense that you know that your money is a lot more secure.
Yeah. So basically what that means is today, when you actually have a money in your wallet, right? It means that you took it out either from a bank or somewhere else, and you actually put it into that wallet. That, and then as a bank-led model, what we do is we actually partner with the bank, and that money that is in the wallet and the money in the bank is actually the same, right? And if those are the same, so that's my debit and credit, what it means is that when you regulate the MNO, regulate them as an ecosystem kind of provider, not as a bank. Because the money is still sitting in a bank. It's not sitting, there is no such thing as a mobile money bank account, if I can call it that. It is actually in the traditional banks, in a lot of the markets.
All right. All right,
So
understood.
how do we regulate us in a way that actually makes sense? So if I give you an example, today, if we pick on WhatsApp within the digital or OTT space, um, you don't regulate WhatsApp as if they are a telco. You don't tell them to have a license. You don't tell them to do all these things. You allow the telcos, who are the infrastructure providers, actually to still provide the connectivity and be licensed and have the spectrum requirements and so on. And this is what we're talking about, is that the OTT WhatsApp is providing the ecosystem for you to communicate, while these guys on the side, which is the GSM business, actually is the one that has to be regulated
All right,
in
all
a
right.
very, very tight way.
Understood, understood. Just lastly and finally, what is MTN's fintech future, and how does that translate into the bottom line for your shareholders, who you'll ultimately need to back the strategy that you want to implement in the fintech space?
Yeah, I mean, it's an exciting future for each and every one of the people that are invested in MTN. When I look at, for example, the valuation of MTN, the fintech business is actually not valued at all. So today, if I look at companies like Safaricom, which also has a significant fintech play, they are significantly or much higher valued than MTN. So what do we need to do? We really need to get out there and expose the value of our fintech play. We have not been talking a lot about what we've actually been doing and the results of what we've been doing. And the more we start doing that, I believe that the shareholders will reward us with the appropriate kind of valuations around our fintech business. A lot of the fintech standalone businesses are rated anywhere from 15 times EBITDA to about 70 times EBITDA, depending on the nature of the business. And we are nowhere near that. And for me, I mean, if there's one thing we can do, is start actually showcasing and actually being able to realize that value and unlock that value for our shareholders, even in our current construct, even without additional growth. I mean, we are pretty much the same size in terms of our fintech business as M-Pesa in Safaricom, as I sit here today.
All right. Well, Yolanda, I think it's just a simple case of showing them the money, showing them the returns, and they'll give you the valuation that you seek. But we are out of time, and thank you so much for your time in explaining the position, the strategy that MTN obviously is taking in this space. But we'll leave it there for now.